extended essay guidance for physics with our speaker, Coelia Oja. Coelia has taught physics to high school students across curricula for the past 20 years. She's currently working at École Mondiale Bird School in Mumbai as the head of science and the faculty of physics. She has a master's degree in physics with a specialization in numerical application of physics. She's also led sessions on teaching and learning methodology in physics for teachers on various forums for different curricula. She enjoys unraveling mysteries in class, and a few of her favorite activities in class are analyzing action sequences in movies. The whole idea is to increase students' motivation by introducing a practical and recognizable problem with an educative component, the physics, logic, and feasibility. She believes that the extended essay is a fantastic tool to enhance critical thinking skills. So we're very happy to have Coelia with us today. And without further ado, I'd love to pass it on to Coelia. And Coelia, as I said, I will be your ears and hands and on the chat to help you.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon from my end. Must be different time of the day for all of you. I can see so many people joining in from different areas. Few people I know, few people we chat sometimes, right? So welcome to this platform. Looking forward to a constructive evening, the next 2 hours. And this is absolutely a collaborative program. So I would like you people to participate throughout it, share your views, your knowledge, understanding with all of us. So moving forward ahead, so our learning objectives this evening are basically choosing a topic and developing an RQ. Then we'll move on to differentiating between IA and EE, unpacking an exemplar, understanding Rppf, and then finally role of a supervisor.
I've done that. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So moving on to this, let's have a look at that, the nature of the extended essay. Well, fine. This is an unique opportunity for student-led academic exploration of a topic of personal interest, as we all know. Here, students demonstrate their intellectual initiative, either through an in-depth inquiry or through an interdisciplinary inquiry. So what we are going to focus on today is an EE into a subject-specified EE, that's the physics for us. So this brings students the excitement of intellectual exploration while helping them to develop important transferable skills in research, critical thinking, reflection, and self-management. And especially when you sit with them for the last Viva Voce, the reflection session, that is when this gets reflected remarkably. Reflection on the research process enables students to gain a deep understanding of their intellectual and personal learning achievements, and an extended essay in physics should answer a research question in physics through focused evidence-based argument. The evidence may be drawn from the student's personal engagement, experiment, book, or maybe an internet-based research that they have come across. Now, with whichever method of research is adopted, the student must use the principles of physics. Mostly, according to my experience, students take up EE in physics if they're interested in the subject, they feel that they can actually handle it. And many of them, they take it up because they intend to study physics in future or any subject or any course which is related to physics. As we all know, it's a 4,000 word essay, 40 hours and 34 marks. It's part of the core, IB core. So everybody, whoever decides to take a physics, they come up with a particular goal and intention. I'll walk you through how I allow a student or how I accept a student for writing an EE in physics. We'll do that in a couple of slides. The moment the first introduction happens, they get to know, they get an approval that, okay, they are allowed to do this, they are allowed to write an essay in physics. The first thing that happens is the confusion, the romanticism, right? You'll find multiple ideas floating in. Black hole, string theory, time travel, dark energy, You name it and you have it. So they come up with all the head full of idea. And as a supervisor, it becomes our first job, first task to put them on track, to ensure that they're thinking in the right direction. Ultimately, whatever said and done, this EE needs to be scored. Some marks are involved over here. So we have to look at it from that perspective as well. So when it comes to choosing a topic, there are a few areas or the few dimensions I ask my students to look into before they actually choose a topic. They can have multiple ideas, plethora of ideas, but what should drive the choice of a topic? The first and foremost being the interest. As I always tell them, you choose a topic that you are interested in. So the best topics or best essays that I have supervised all these years, I would find them the one in which the student is actually interested. But as supervisors, we all know that, many times students come up with very vague ideas. They do not really have a definite topic in their mind. That is when you need to handhold a little bit and direct them in the right direction. Then comes the knowledge part. This should be another deciding factor out here. So they should choose a topic, I said, in which they have a little knowledge, but they want to know more. And that is my starting point, starting thing for them. So I ask them to find out, do a little research on what interests them. If they do not have an idea which is outside the curriculum, think of something that you have learned so far, or that you have observed so far, or you have watched so far, you have came across so far. So what do you know about it, and what else do you want to know about it? So that way they know that what is the starting point and where they intend to reach. Finally, the motivation. Obviously, without this motivation, you cannot complete a 40-hour task, right? And it's a 4,000 word essay that needs a lot of dedication and, direction to be stick to it. Finally, who will read my essay? Who is my audience? So it should be written for an international peer who are well versed with diploma program, IBDP physics curriculum, and they should know, or they should be basically knowledgeable, or they should know physics, right? So that's the whole idea. So once that's done, I found this very interesting topic some time back on a common platform, and I thought, why not pick it up and discuss with all of you? So here is a question that, and these are the type of questions that I come across many times the moment students say that they want to do an IEE in physics. So if a student comes to you with how are gamma ray bursts produced and what do they tell us about the universe, this is what they want to explore. So what would your advice to the student be? And what are the factors you will consider when you are considering, or when you face a situation like this where a student comes with a topic like this, gamma ray burst? I would like your opinion on this.
And they'll put this in the chat box, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So feel free to put your thoughts in the chat. So Kolia Mariana says 2 topics discussed at once, so it's not refined.
Very good. Yep. Right. What are you planning to do? Yes, Brian. A big question. What are you planning to do? They very often come up with the topic, idea full in their head, but they don't actually know what are they planning to do ultimately with that. What will be your y-axis? What on the x-axis? Yes. What will be your independent and dependent variable? Correct? Correct? Honestly, if a student comes to me, the first thing is I will actually not encourage the student with this particular concept, gamma ray bursts. If a child insists too much, depending on the ability of that student, how well versed is the student with physics, how well the child is with research, then only I'll allow something like this. But that's a very rare case. I haven't come across a student yet, unfortunately, who is that dedicated to work on something like this. There are many concepts in this gamma ray burst which are beyond the capability of a student at this level. Yes, Joseph, it's quite difficult to do this research. It's quite difficult to do this research. So they start with a head full of idea, but ultimately they somewhere in the midway, by the time it's second RPPF, they get really confused with it and they come in a miserable condition back to you. So this is a topic which I do not prefer. I do not encourage my student to continue with. Okay, that was good input. Thank you. Okay, moving on. These are few topics which again, interestingly, these are the topics which I come very often across from my students, and these were the few topics which were discussed a couple of days back, and again a common platform that we share among our physics facilitators, and I find them really interesting. And because this is a good starting point where you can have a very good idea, like what should a title or the topic, should we choose it, not choose it, or how do we guide them? Like the very first one, electromagnetic wave. A child comes up with this. Force in daily task. Number 3, optimal amount of water needed to, this is a very common topic which comes very often. Diameter of bicycle wheels and how they affect stability. So what is your view? What do you think? What are these topics like? Are they focus topics? Are they focus titles or not? If not, how would you guide them? Your feedback, please. What do you think? You can put your responses in the chat box. Yes, question 3 is best focused of the 4. 1 and 2 are definitely not focused. They're quite vague. The child doesn't know what he or she actually wants to do. Yes, 4 needs more details, but quite focused, I would say. Diameter of bicycle wheels and how they affect stability, though not very clear how to deal with the stability. But I think that can be dealt with a research question. Yes, Gerda. 4 has potential but needs clear dependent variable. Agreed. Yes, absolutely correct, Abdul. Select the area of research which to address. In number 2, absolutely. Force in daily task, it's so vague that it covers so many areas, arenas. Yes. Yes, absolutely, absolutely correct. 3 is the best of all these things. So that is how focused the topic needs to be for us to understand that in which direction the E is progressing. Well, fine, moving on. A little bit of, before we actually start with the whole process, a little note on the ethical guidelines. Well, we all know in experimental science, Shraddha, you can share the Padlet link over here. This is the ethical guideline, which is issued by IB. You can have a look at that. And for any kind of research, we know for experimental sciences, there are certain areas, there are certain precautions we all need to take, right? This is, you need to maintain honesty and integrity, no plagiarism, please. If you are taking resources from somebody, be careful enough to quote that person, quote that source. Yes, protection of human subjects, care of animal subjects, responsible publication, definitely. Confidentiality, it's very important. So moving on. Double dipping, a very interesting point out here, right? So just to ensure more on this later on in the presentation as we proceed from here. So the same topic or same experiment cannot be used for EE as well as for internal assessment or other practical work carried out during the course. You just cannot do that. Be very, very, very careful as a supervisor. I have found quite a few times where the students kind of tend to mix up topics between maths and physics. That has happened quite often. So there we need to really guide students to make sure that they are not in any way mixing up the same topic as, say sometimes they do it in maths IA and they come up with that as a physics EE. So that kind of a mix-up should not happen. Neither should it happen as their IA and E. They cannot take the same area of experiment or investigation as their IA and EE. Quickly, let's move on to the nature of the research question. So research question is something that is more focused. It should be more focused. In fact, research question is something that kind of refines and defines the topic further. And research question is something that should be dynamic, but not too long, right? It should actually invite a critical examination of the topic. It should be a narrow and well-focused question. And it should also encourage analysis, evaluation, synthesis, right? So research question basically gives us a direction or an idea how to treat this topic further. What kind of investigation do I need to do? Should it be what kind of experimentation do I need to do? How do I treat this particular topic? Research question is the one which will help us define that. Moving on. So what is a research question? It's a process of development. Like as you can see, it can't happen at one go, never possible. So it's a process in which you actually take it via a lot of reading, the ideas, methodologies, method, what are you going to do? Okay, Shraddha, if you can share the Padlet link over here.
Yes, it's in the chat.
Yeah, and can we just open that document as well? Is it possible, or do I need to open that, Shraddha?
You can open it on the screen and I can share it in the chat if you'd like.
Yes, it will be really nice.
Okay.
Can I stop sharing for a second? I'll open that document. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, and I'll share it in the chat once you've presented it.
So till the time that I just share it with you people, can you please share like how do you go about developing the research question? Any particular method, technique that you use, that you encourage your students to follow? This is one of the samples from a research question developed by one of my students. So this is the exercise I asked them to go through, where they have to write a purposeful question. So my first advice to them is think of the topics, come up with any 3 ideas that you would like to research on. The second would be to research about it, come back with more reading, and share at least 3 resources with me. 3 resources from which they will be referring to. So this is one of the samples. As you can see, this child wanted to work on the Hohmann transfer of orbits to planets in solar system. So the first thing is describe your work in 1 sentence. So this is what he comes up with. Then the next one is suggest a question. So every child in my who will be writing an EE under my supervision, they have to complete this whole form before they can actually embark on it. Then add a rationale, and you can see how the research question gradually develops. And final, the research question that he started with his EE was how does the delta V for interplanetary mission vary for different planets in solar system? Well, fine, this was not the final RQ. It again went through a little bit of modification, moderation when he actually started conducting the experiment. Start writing the whole EE. So this is again shared on Padlet. Feel free to use it and share it with your students. Yeah. Shraddha, moving on, there will be another resource over there. Please share.
Yes, the IBO document.
Yes, IBO document. And as I was saying, this is the process I ask my students to go through. Shraddha, there will be a resource which says pitch. You can share that as well.
All right. Yeah, the pitch is also in the Padlet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So everyone, you can find the pitch in the Padlet. It's called Extended Essay Pitch. Everything's in the Padlet. Yeah.
It's
exactly.
RQ pitch, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen, the RQ
Yes,
pitch?
it's very clear. Yeah.
It's very clear. Extended essay pitch, right. So this is one exercise I make my students go through. And every time it has worked, because whatever idea they have, after this small exercise, they come up with a much more focused topic and a focused RQ to start with. Is the same one for which you saw this RQ development of the RQ. So this is a pitch that they have to do, a 5-minute pitch they have to do for me, where they basically sell their idea, that what is a topic that they have chosen and how they plan to go ahead with that. Until and unless I am convinced with this whole idea, I do not let them, I do not give them a, a go ahead with that. So if you can see, this is the first, this is the slide presentation that this student did to actually sell his idea to me. Like, this is his motivation, from where this is his basically interest, that why or how did he choose to take up this particular topic. Moving on, he gives me an idea about a background information, basically. What is this all about? What is Hohmann transfer and what is delta V? So, a student may come up with a topic which you did not know, which you did not have studied, but you have some idea about it. You can always research and find more about it. What you really need to look at, how invested is the child in this topic, in this particular concept. That is what is more important, because ultimately it's the child's, is the student's research. He convinces me with sufficient mathematical formulae and the method that can be used over here. So much so, he went ahead and even he had a very good idea, like how he is going to actually conduct this. And that was one more reason why this particular investigation was chosen this way, because we did it during the time of pandemic, where he didn't have an access to the laboratory. So he decided to do it with a simulation. This is a simulation which he himself designed, and that is how the data were collected and compared with some data which is already available on the internet. So it was more of a comparison, like how the whole, how it is going hand in hand. So justifying the research question, he comes up with all those things. So this is a pitch which every child needs to go through if they choose to do a E. They come and tell me, I want to do an E. Okay, wonderful. What are the 3 topics have you thought of? Right. And what kind of research are you going to do in this thing? And what is your RQ? What is your preliminary RQ? Okay, fine, you have that. So how are you going to do that? So make a pitch, sell your idea. This is just one of the PPTs. It's not necessarily they every time come up with a PPT. They have a choice. How do they want to do? They sometimes bring models, sometimes give me ideas or something, but it's fine. It's absolutely fine, but it goes that way. Any questions, any viewpoint, any views, any feedback at this point of time? You want to ask something? I'm open to that right now.
I see one question that's just come up.
Yes.
Coelia, so I'll post that to you. It's from Joseph. He says, if the student has no comparison, he's doing something that wasn't already done. Is that possible? How do you respond to that?
Yes. Why not? Why not? Till the time, the arrives at can analyze it, can evaluate it. Okay, this is how I have done. That was when I said it's comparing with some data which is already available. That was his choice. That was the student's choice, right? So yes, definitely. Why not? Why not? Okay. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, the research method and literature review. I think we all know this. It's just one-page view, like how to go about it. So decide on a broad topic area to research, develop a topic of personal interest. That is where your pitch and everything comes in. Yeah, I'll take this question. Abdul, can we integrate world studies with physics? No, definitely not. Rather, you can integrate physics in world studies. So physics along with another subject, like I had a student who did a physics and design technology as world studies. That can be done. Yes. So construct a research question, then plan the research. Like once you focus on your research question, then you know very clearly in your head that what kind of research do you plan to do, right? Then what kind of research methodology are you going to apply, compile and organize information, analyze, interpret, and synthesize the finding. This is the difficult part where students really struggle. Formulating an idea, making the research question is still good. Collecting data, how they want to conduct the research is still fine. The moment they come to research and interpreting and synthesizing and evaluating is where our students start finding it difficult. Okay, moving on. This is the point at which I actually emphasize on the concept or the importance of research reflection space. And I have this tiny little example where Margaret E. Knight, she was working on the design of paper bag, right? And her idea was stolen. And as you can see, it's all over here, the information out here. It's there in a big print in my room as well, where the students can walk in and have a look at that as well. And it's a very good example. The students kind of understand it, sits very well with them. And when she went ahead and contested the whole patent, that why was it not in her name, it's given to her in a wrong hand. So the only argument the other party could say is that a woman cannot do something like this, whereas she had her entire research table, her journal with which she could prove that she actually was the one who had done this. So this is a good example. And as I said, I have this in big print in my room where students can walk in and check it out anytime. So research reflection space, I insist, though it's need not be submitted anywhere. We follow manage back, and I kind of insist that they keep updating your thought process over there. You want to make a word map, please go ahead and do that. Even it's a rough work, you're scribbling in a piece of paper, please make sure that you take a snapshot and put it over there. It actually helps them during their reflection, the final reflection as well. They can actually see the progress they have gone in their organizational skill, in their management skills and all this stuff. So that is a very good display of how well they have progressed in their ATL skills as well. And that gives them a sense of pride as well. When they look at their work 2 years back or 1.5 years back to what they are finally presenting, I can see that sense of pride in them. And that's quite evident during the interview, the final interview. Moving on, the type of essays that they can decide to do is basically experimental, database, theoretical, survey, or combination. Out of all these things, honestly, if you ask me, I, as a physics teacher, as a student of physics, I prefer the experimental one, followed by data-based, right? Theoretical is something I'm a little apprehensive of, because I had tried it once or twice with 1 or 2 students of mine, but they couldn't really handle it that well. It becomes a little difficult for them. So I kind of, prod them, cajole them towards the experimental or data-based style of writing an essay, where I find it's easier for them to handle at this stage, because they've already done an IA by that time. And so they have a little idea about how does it go and all. Okay, I'm sorry, it's a couple of slides which has gone further back. Let me take it back. Okay, here. So I have a little example for all of us to ponder upon. So this is again from one of my kitty, from my students, right? So here you can see analysis, like one of the topic that one of my students have chosen is analysis of tension during sway oscillation of a suspension bridge model. The research question was, to what extent does the initial angular displacement theta affect the angular tension in filaments per oscillation of a suspension bridge model during lateral sway oscillation? This child was really invested in engineering. He really wanted to get into structural engineering, and that is what he chose. So the moment the RQ was decided, it was quite evident that here, for this theory, it can be a design, like where the student actually design an experiment, and that is how the whole EE is conducted. So I have a little something for you guys. So let's see. So I have again 2 topics picked up from here. You can check that out, like relationship between radius and pressure distribution in a vortex. And that's your RQ. And topic 2 is investigation of the effect of banking angle and vertical load on tire stress. You can check the research question for both of them. My question to you people is, if you get these topic and the research question, what would be the appropriate approach to these EE? How would you do that? Please write your views in the chat box. So if the first question goes as relationship between radius and pressure distribution in a vortex. If you had to do this particular EE, how would you treat this RQ? What method would you apply? Will it be an experiment-based, primary data, secondary data, a simulation?
Any thoughts, please put it in the chat.
Yeah, Catherine, theoretical. Yes, quite possible. Okay. Topic to experimental. Yes, topic 2 was definitely experimental. Okay, first one, experimental, topic 2 based on data from somewhere. Yes, okay. Experimental, but not sure if the lab will have the facility to measure the dependent variable. Aishwarya, which one would that be? The first one or the second one? The second one. Okay, Aishwarya. Okay, the first one was actually designed by the student. She used bottles of different radius and then checked out the vortex. It was a total experimental. She collected the data and went ahead and did that. And with some simulation along with that, she compared the two results. Investigation of the effect of banking angle and vertical load on tire stress. Yes, the initial plan was a hands-on experiment design, but we couldn't do it thanks to the sudden lockdown. So this was done with, again, a simulation that the child or a design that the child actually made and collected data from a real life example. She has a source where she could actually collect data about the Formula One cars, about this banking angle and all, and that is how this experiment was done. Yes, you're right. There's an opportunity of doing both theoretical as well as experimental in the first one. The child chose to do it, go by the experimental way. Well, fine. Moving on to extended essay and internal assessment. There's a little comparison between IA and EE. So IA, as we all know, it's a very common question which comes very often from the students. Is EE an extended form or a bigger form of IA or not? It's just an extended IA, extended investigation. But this is where the idea needs to be very clear that IA is more focused on the syllabus content as compared to EE, which explores the aspect of physics, but not covered in the syllabus as such, right? IA must collect data and analysis, and EE must construct a theoretical framework. For IA focuses on the application of scientific method. Well, that's true for both of them. Scientific inquiry format is something that needs to be followed in both IA and EE. This is again the next one. I pick up this example from Think IB, and it has worked every time with my students. They understand the concept very well. So it's the same RQ which is being used to explore both IA and EE, but not at the same time. Let's be very clear about that. So what's the relationship between the temperature of a ball of a plasticine clay, and the maximum force exerted on a hard surface when dropped from a fixed height? So if it is an IA, they have to guess the hypothesis, right? Plasticine gets softer as the temperature is increased, so it will squash more when it hits the hard surface. So the maximum force should be less, correct? Drop a ball onto the top of a floor sensor and measure the force, change the temperature of the ball and repeat measurements. Discover that it's difficult to repeat the measurement because the ball doesn't hit the same spot every time. That comes into your evaluation and further exploration. You have to process data using the usual maximum minimum method. That's find your error, error bars, so on and so forth. When it comes to EE, the same RQ can be treated this way. So start by researching the effect of temperature on plasticine or some similar materials, impulse, bouncing balls, etc. So you basically look at the theoretical aspect of this, right? Further research into how the temperature affects plasticine clay. On the basis of the research, formulate a hypothesis and, if possible, a mathematical relationship. Then they move ahead to design an experiment that can control all the variables, landing position, shape of ball, temperature of ball, drop position, so on and so forth. They build an apparatus required to drop the ball consistently, take repeated measurements of the variables. This is clearly an experiment which cannot be done any other way but a hands-on experiment, right? So moving on. So this gives a very clear idea to my students. I explore if they come up with a topic, in case of a confusion or a doubt, if they still have, we do this little exercise where we look at how, if you treat it as an IA, what all will you include? And if you treat it as an EE, what all should you include? And that gives them a pretty clear idea about it. Okay, so moving on, interpreting the extended essay criteria. Any questions? I would actually wouldn't mind if you have this. This is an E from my student. How does the effect of slipping affect the motion of a cylinder down an inclined plane? I would also be doing research on the relationship between coefficient of friction. Joseph, I think this particular question can be treated both as IA and EE. Depends how you treat it, right? Effect of slipping affect the motion of a cylinder down an inclined plane. When you look at the effect of slipping, it's more of a research into slipping, and I would prefer it to be, the kind of research work or the preliminary work that it would go into that. It will be better as an EE more than an IA, right? But yes, you can treat, you can actually look at it from IA, obviously shaving off certain part. I would also be doing research on the relationship between coefficient of friction and how it would affect velocity. Both of them simultaneously in the same research, Joseph? I'm not very sure about that. Are they two separate questions, or you're planning to do both of them in the same? Yes, Gerda, I also requires some research and background info, but the kind of research that you need to do, the theory that you need to develop in EE, that is not required in IA. Joseph, if we do both of them, then definitely it's an IA. But then again, I would say it becomes too much. It's better if you actually focus on few. Otherwise, it becomes difficult to put it within 4,000 words. I wouldn't advise you to take both of them simultaneously. Well, moving on, interpreting the extended essay criteria. Well, criteria A, which talks about the focus and method. It's basically about topic, the research question, and methodology. We all know it has a maximum of 6 marks, right? Criteria B, knowledge and understanding, context, physical, the physics specific terminologies that we use in this, and concepts, again, has 6 marks, right? Here, okay, sorry, let's move on. Criteria C is a critical thinking, the research, analysis, discussion, evaluation, right? It basically has 12 marks. So this is the criteria where the student actually gets to display the kind of research they have done, the analysis, the evaluation they have done regarding the research they have undertaken. Moving on to criteria D, it's your presentation, the structure and layout, right? So I have added a document in the Padlet, which Shraddha will be sharing with you people. There are some pointers, the checklist with which you can actually check out. You can actually compare the EE with respect to that. And last and not the least is your criteria E, the engagement, where you basically it's basically the time for reflection for students, the process they have undertaken, the research focus, whether it was there or not. And it's basically assessed through their reflection session at different intervals throughout the essay. Okay, so let's move on to this part. Well, this is from the grade boundary from the last May 2021. The grade boundaries, and as you can see, I'm sure most of you will have it from your school as well, but I thought of adding it over here for us to have an idea about it. Okay, so moving on to the major focus of this session today, it's about unpacking an exemplar. So I'm sharing an exemplar with you people, one of an EE. I would like you people to be in small groups and look at different criteria of it. Now you cannot assess the whole thing based on a single, on all the criteria. What Shraddha will do is she will put you people in different breakout rooms. Shraddha, please share the Padlet link also with them so that they have the, the rubric.
And Coelia, if you can actually just right now on the Padlet, if you can show them exactly which document you want them to open, sure, everybody has the Padlet. Sure. I will also share the exemplar, right, the sample exemplar now.
Correct. So you can use the EE physics rubric. You can use the EE physics rubric. You have the descriptors and the physics specific notes, the examples and all. You can go by that. And whichever breakout room you're in and whatever criteria that you follow. Shraddha, how many breakout rooms are we getting out here?
We have about 16 people. So if you would like, would you like 4 in each? Or
4
3?
In each, yeah.
4 in each.
So maybe breakout room 1 looks at criteria A, 2 at criteria B, breakout room 3 at criteria C, and breakout room 4 in criteria D. We will leave the criteria E for the time being. We'll give you some time to go through it and grade the EE based on that particular criteria. Please feel free to use that document, the rubric that I've shared with you people on Padlet. I hope all of you can access that Padlet so that, yes, Shraddha, you can share the exemplar with
the exemplar. So if you can just click on that document just to sort of briefly explain how you want them to use the exemplar. It's in the chat box if you want to click there as well. The sample exemplar. Yeah, just a quick note on how they use this, and I can divide everybody.
Yeah, sure. So that's the exemplar that you will be going through.
Mm-hmm.
Please go through and grade it on criteria A if you're in group 1, criteria B if you're in room 2, criteria C if you're in room 3, and criteria D if you're in room 4.
All right. Any questions for Coelia before you get into your breakout rooms? Any questions for now? Okay, I will be dividing you into breakout rooms now.
Excuse me, how much time do we have?
How much time do they have, Coelia?
Yeah, I think 20 minutes would be good for you to quickly skim through and grade it against one criteria. You will need at least that much time to at least look through the whole EE.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to divide you now. You will see a join button for the breakout room. Please click join to join your breakout room, and a small note. When you leave the room, please click leave room. Don't leave the meeting. It will take you out of the meeting. So I'm going to do this now, and perfect. Please join your rooms. Coelia, you'll also be automatically routed to the room. I will bring you back to the main room.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So how did it go? How did the discussion go? I know I was in room 2. I could manage in room 1. Sorry, I couldn't go to room 3, but what's your general comment or general discussion, or what do you think? How did you grade this EE?
we are in group 1, so I unpacked the first criterion. So I marked 5 marks for 6. Why? Because normally, when I'm marking for my student, even though I'm not examiner or a extended essay marker, normally when I mark, so I give 5 marks for the lower side, even though the criterion is fully fitted on that particular essay. So the student should score a full credit for the criterion.
Okay.
That is for this is my opinion, even though someone else giving the lower marks, but from my side, I can mark around 5 to 6 marks max.
Okay. 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 That's good. I can see criteria B, you're saying 5 out of 6, and criteria D would be 3 or 4. Why would 3, Thomas? Thomas, did I pronounce the name correctly?
It's
Please
okay.
excuse
I'm
me
just
for
turning
that.
my microphone on and
Yeah.
turn the video on. There you go. Personal preferences, but that's very personal. Default formatting of tables where everything is left aligned and the decimal places don't align and the minus shifts off some data. It doesn't take much to fix it. It's something I would have pointed out to a student if I was their advisor. So if a student just goes for default formatting of all the tables, which was the case here, then you have a discussion, okay, does it distract from the information? Because IB wants us to be positive markers. Yes, no. So I'm not bowled over by the presentation. On the other hand, it was good enough for me to start noticing that there may be some shortcomings in the physics of it. So it was presented clearly enough for me to notice whether the physics works or not. So in that respect, one can be justified in giving a 4. But I said, my personal preference for tables, and there were other things perhaps here and there, that I wasn't bowled over by what I saw. That's only. But in the end, 1 point doesn't make much of a difference to the grade. So you know, I wouldn't argue with anybody who would decide to go for a 4. Correct. And I wouldn't argue with somebody who would decide to go for a 3 either.
You know, for me, for this present EE, that was 1 point. And then though the research, I would say, given a 17, 18-year-old boy doing that was quite good for me. But then the flow of the research, evaluation sometimes comes with the methodology along with that methodology at the beginning and then following that. So it was a little discordant for me. So that was one area even I had shaped some marks at this point. I'll discuss what IB has come up with in some time. Okay, so criteria B, yes, Bara, why do you think yes, Brian or Bara, anybody from criteria B group 2, why 5? There seems to be a gap in his theory. Yes, Brian, we were discussing that. Yes, correct.
Yeah, I couldn't find. He may have it in there because just having a few minutes to read it. But even if it's in, even if he has put in there the gap in the theory about the type of pendulums and the fact that his method it's not clear, and if it's not clear, then he has to either be penalized in this or in somewhere in his communication about the fact that you have to search really, really hard for the gaps in the theory. Is there a gap in the theory or not? So it's pretty impressive, but is there some gaps there? I just didn't really have enough time to work it out.
So, well, fine. I had graded this as 28 out of 34. And this is what IB thought. Let me share this with you. Don't go by the comments. This wasn't the original one. I readjusted it looking at the final grade that IB gave. So when it came back moderated to us, it was 32 out of 34. Brian, like you, I too had a problem with the little bit of physics here and there. It wasn't very clear, but this is what IB came back with. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're very generous.
Yes,
I wish I were that generous with my students. Yeah, if I had marked it, I think I would have marked it a bit stricter. As I said, the layout I don't think is very clear, as Thomas was saying as well, and we found.
Correct.
I didn't think. Yeah, I would have asked them to change or to improve that.
Right.
Or her. I don't know who it is. And yeah, and also what we already noticed about the theory explanation, the way, if you're searching for things where you can't find things, or things are not at the place where you were expecting them to be. That's also, I think, a very important part of a clear quality essay. So I think they're being very generous. Yeah.
I think what Thomas said though is that IB uses positive marking across everything, and if the marker did find that the theory is correct there, because I mean there's a heck of a lot of theory there, and to actually go through it in detail and to check it, which is the marker's job. And if they've found that all the theory is correct and complete, then you would have to say then the 32 is justified. It's just that there was one time when we said, how much longer do we need? And I said a couple of days to read it, because it's pretty heavy on a lot of mathematical and physics theory. But if it's all there, then the IB would mark it positively, because that's what they do.
Correct. So they always look at, the higher band. That is a suggestion we generally get out of it. So yes, Thomas, I do agree what you said. The formatting wasn't accurate, not up to my liking and all. But yes, we limit our number of feedback and all. So yes, this is it. Okay, so moving on. As I said, I left the Rppf out of this discussion. So specifically for the new supervisors who are here, there are a few guidelines that I've put up, that I've compiled together from various sources. This is what I share with my students as well. So when we say, and when we look at Rppf, sorry for that mistake, there should be a Rppf, not an Rppf, my mistake. It's a 500-word reflective statement spanned over 3 sessions. At the very beginning, right after when they have decided on their topic, and they've just embarked on the research work, that is when we do the first Rppf, second one being somewhere in the midway. Usually they are in a very, in a little bit of a messed up situation, most of the cases, leaving apart a few where they really need the hand-holding over there, and hand-holding again with all the limitations that the supervisor must follow. And the final one after they have submitted their final draft, and basically follows with an interview where we discuss that we kind of celebrate the whole process. That's the whole idea. We in fact spend one complete day where in the sense like a session, a part of the day where the students get to discuss or celebrate their IA, what they have done, what did they go through, what changes they think they personally have gone through. So those are the things that they get to discuss and display out here. Okay, a little bit of details about the first reflection session. I can share it with you people on the Padlet. This is already there, Rppf 1. So again, I have picked up the Rppf of the same extended essay we just had a look at. So the very first one, I hand it out to them. This is what our EE coordinator also has basically compiled, and as subject-specific supervisors, we have kind of added few more questions to that and personalized it to our subject-specific requirement, right? So it goes that way, and then we picked up something from IA Guide. You can just go through that. It gives a very good idea to the students. They go through it, and they definitely have put up an example over there for the first reflection, what the child writes for the same EE that we were actually exploring. So this child was, as I told you, depends on what course they plan to take up in university level. So like this kid, and he is doing mechanical engineering, and so he decided to focus his EE idea on this particular topic. And he does mention that he referred to the scholarly articles and what are the sources he actually looked at and how we finally decided on to, or why did I allow him to go ahead with this particular exploration. Okay, moving on, it's there on the Padlet. Moving on, the second RPPF, as I said, this is the time when you actually are midway, and it is right before the submission of the first draft. So this is the time when they are really in a very distort situation or condition most of the time. This is where you really need to pacify them, guide them in the right direction. Again, with limitations, all the restrictions on a supervisor, sorry, as it is. So is the research question clear and refined? And usually, you know, between this gap of first draft and the second draft, you can see a sea of a change that comes to you. They may, I don't know how strict are you people at your school, but yes, they do come up with a little suggestions, sometimes, you know, a little bit of more discussions. But yes, as I say, we are very strict about what kind of feedback is given to the students out here. So some possible questions that I shared with them, and moving on, another example from the same EE that we found. And this is where the child was actually falling apart, but thankfully he kind of again gathered his thought process, and he came up with this. I'll give you a minute to read through it. Any questions? Welcome here. I think we can move on from here if we're done with this. Yeah, it's there on the Padlet, you can always refer to. Finally, moving on to the third RPPF, where we look at the final reflection. Few guiding questions. We share these questions with our students before the final reflection session. I would like to know, do you people record this reflection session some way on video, on camera, or it's just a face-to-face interview and that's all? Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, it's always better to have a video recording of the same, right? Correct. And here comes the supervisor comment. These are not physics specific, I'm sorry, these are general ones, but you can, it kind of gives you a good idea that how to go about the supervisor's comment. Basically, we highlight how the student has performed. Please make it a very honest statement out there. No need to you know, cover anything or anything of that sort. It gives a very good idea to the moderator, like what to be expected. And many a times, you know, it kind of gives a nice idea, look into how the process had been. Okay. Any questions here? Any feedback? Any thoughts? Any difficulties that you face, or anything special that you do at this point? Or it's almost like the end of the whole EE process? Okay.
There's one question, Coelia, is there a word limit for supervisor comments?
Yes. Honestly, I don't really look into that. You know, I think, yes, there is a supervisor limit for that. We generally write it on manage back itself. Anybody remembers that? How many? That's 500 for the students.
I think 500 for supervisor also.
500 for supervisor as well, but I don't think
On
any of
management.
us. On manage back,
Yes.
right? That's what
Yes,
that's the
yes.
number that was coming to. But we generally keep on writing it on manage back itself.
Yes. Yes.
Honestly, I've never really paid attention to that much, right? The students we do keep in, because you know all the 3 RPPF that
Yes.
keeps on telling you how many words left more for you to write. Yes, correct. Thank you, Abdul. Thank you for that. Yes. I'm sorry. That's it. A little bit about responsibilities of a supervisor. All of us are looking at some or other IA, whatever the number is. Few of us are dealing with 1, 2, few of us are dealing with 6. That's the maximum I heard over here. Yes, Aishwarya? RPPF 1, I think before that you already have a session with the students where you kind of help the child to zero in on like all your pitch and stuff, all those developing the RQ, that's already done before you actually go for RPPF 1. That should be your first done in first and second point of contact, and then you go into RPPF after the child has decided on the RQ, right? You do all those preliminary worksheets with them, the initial exercises with them. Once they flesh out a RQ where it seems to be quite focused, need not be well focused, but at least the child has figured out what will be the independent variable, dependent variable. The child has an idea that how to carry forward with this research question, how the experiment should be done. That is the point of your first RPPF. Because once that thought process is clear in the child's idea, he or she can actually write a reflection on the starting, or can write the reflection, can write the first RPPF. RPPF 2, we generally do it right before the first draft. By that time, they would have already created a skeleton of the whole EE. And as I keep saying, this is the time when they will be in the most miserable state in most of the case, all these years I've seen, because till that time, they do not really wake up from sleep. They have created that, they have thought of the topic, they've thought of the RQ, then they go into a slumber. They have many other things going on in their life, right? With their IAs, with new applications and stuff like that. So that is when RPPF 2 is generally when you really need to, give them that scaffold that, okay, you're on the right track, or you need to change the track a little bit, or look into it this way. You just probe them cajole them into the right direction. That goes your RPPF 2. Yes, Aishwarya. Anything specific you were looking at during this time, Aishwarya?
I was just wondering if there's like a specific duration or recommended duration, because in the form we fill up like the month and whether it's DP1 or 2. Right.
Okay, so what I can tell you that in our school, what we do, we take the first RPPF in the month of May, right? And we take the first draft in month of October. It's right before we go for autumn break, right? So that is when we take our RPPF 2. And by end of December, after they come back from autumn break and all, by mid of December or end of December, we take the final EE. So that, the EE, one thing is out of their way in the last semester to the exam. So
Okay,
that is the timeline we follow in our school.
Yeah.
Okay.
Noted.
So here comes the responsibilities of the supervisor. You can predict a grade for the essay that is submitted to IB. Complete the supervisor's report. As I keep repeating, scaffold, but do not handhold them, but do not tell them exactly what they need to do. It's ultimately their work. It's not your work. I keep telling my team, it's not your work. Even if you do not know the topic, it's fine. You can always research and find out more. And EE is their work, their research work, their capability of doing a research is what is more assessed as compared to how much you know as a supervisor, right? So that is the thing, that is the area that we should be focusing on, concentrating on. Moving on, effective supervisor, definitely keep a track of the last year's examiner's report or the last examiner's report. Be prepared to spend about 4 hours with each student to supervise. Sometimes few students need more than that. But again, be very, very cautious about it. Ensure that the level of essay is appropriate both for the IB and the student. Please gauge your student, right? What is the ability? Sometimes, as I said, they come up with a big idea, but they are just not fit enough to carry on with that, right? So just check that out. Keep checking on them. Keep giving them a reality check at the very beginning itself. Know how to assess information about the chosen topic, read the criteria very, very well. There are rubric available out there. Please follow that. Please make sure that and the resources they're using, they're saying they're using, is that age appropriate, is that topic appropriate or not? Please double check that. Be familiar with or make sure that the student can contact someone who is the experimental techniques required. I haven't come across a situation in physics EE as such, but yes, I have been assessing a couple of world studies EE as well, where we needed to refer to some experts outside the school, and that was properly documented and all. As so far, I haven't had a situation where we need to do that in physics EE. Know how to write an abstract and document sources. I'm sure as supervisor, we all know that. If you don't know, please look into it, how to go about it. Read the EE guide. It's quite explanatory. It's a big one, but it's very, very informative. Please go through that, right? Conduct a short conclusive interview for Viva. Yes, we do enjoy that. We definitely sit. I would say not more than 10 to 15 minutes is my limit for that. They generally come up quite tensed, but I don't know what the teacher is going to ask and stuff like that. But it's 10 to 15 minutes. I let them talk, whatever they feel like, because they've gone through the process. So they speak a lot of sense at that point of time. And you can actually see the change that they have gone through anyway. So moving on, what a supervisor is not required to is write the essay for the student. Please, please, please do not at any point of time feel obliged to do that, even if somebody asks you to do that. Do not correct the essay. You can guide them. You can tell them that, okay, you can lead them to think what is the right, which is right, which is wrong. So that's the reason why sometimes, formatting doesn't come up the way it is. I would be talking about it prior to the whole process begin, but definitely once the essay comes in, I can just tell them, would you like to look at the formatting out here? Or what do you think? Can we work on this? But never like look at the significant figures or change the formatting or something like that. No direct questions, please, right? Know how to solve all problems. No, it's not possible for us to know everything. Please accept that. You can learn loads of things. I learn loads of things, right? It may not be an area of interest for me. As a physics student, I enjoy classical mechanics. I enjoy mechanics a lot. I like quantum mechanics, but when it comes to astrophysics, a topic like that, that's not my area of specialty. But yes, along with students, I do learn. But definitely, as I keep saying, you have to explain it to me. If I understand it, then only I let you go ahead with that. That means you have the skill of explaining it back to me. If you can explain it to me, you can translate it into your essay as well. Understand how to derive all equations. Know how to turn a bad essay into a good one. Not your responsibility again. Please don't feel that way. Please be very, very, very careful and cautious about it. Okay, sorry, formatting the extended essay. I think all of us know it's a 4,000 word essay. A little bit of thing that, the equations and the table, what you have is not counted in that 4,000 word essay. The major problem that I find with the students is they end up with a huge essay. First, they struggle how to reach 2,000, and then they don't know how to bring it down to 4,000. So that is one area that most of the students struggle into. And I think this is going to be discussed in the next upcoming session. So I will leave that out of my discussion today. And here I am, open to some questions if you have. Please feel free to ask me anything further, or your viewpoints, what difficulties you face, how do you deal with those points. I'm all ears to listen to. It will be a good discussion going.
I have a question here.
Yes.
Regarding your slide on an effective supervisor should be able to, I saw a point on be able to write an abstract. Could you please elaborate on that? The previous slide.
Yes.
Yeah, the second last point. Yes.
So how to document sources, like the sources. If a child comes up with a topic, right? We all have written some or other research paper at some point of time. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not, please read more of research papers and see how the abstract can be written or how it should be written, like how the essay should actually start, which should give you an idea about the methodology and all. That is how you will be able to assess it, or you can guide your students. That's my point on that.
Right. The abstract is not. It used to be compulsory, but it's not part of the external essay anymore. So the students are not supposed to write it anymore.
So when I read this, I thought
Yeah,
like you're talking about the abstract that needs to be written in the E. It's not a requirement anymore, isn't it?
Yeah, it is not a requirement anymore. But a good research paper. Yeah, I should not have put that point over there. But a good research paper, it's always good to have an abstract. Though I do not. I agree. That's a point I should not have put over there. Anyway, fine. So basically, when they write an abstract, or when they know what an abstract is, they know very clearly what the experiment is. It gives an insight into what the whole essay is all about. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I get it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Anything else that you would like to ask? So what difficulties do you face with your EE?
Feel free to leave it in the chat. If you don't want to ask your questions out loud, that's totally fine. Please leave your questions in the chat.
Yeah, what are your challenges? How do you overcome with your EE?
I think we can give them 30 seconds to put their questions down.
One of the challenges I have is that often the students don't know how to write an essay, and they actually don't know how to physically write the essay once they've got the data, and it turns into a real struggle to actually get them to write the essay.
How do you help them, Brian?
Well, I try and send them off to someone in the school who's an essay specialist, but I give them examples of essays, both extended essays and physics essays, but it's often because of their level of English that is quite low, that they really struggle to actually to use words that are actually sensible in the construction of their sentences. And I really struggle about how much I can even help them on that, or whether I should help them.
Correct. Yeah. So whether it's their first language or not, sometimes students generally struggle with writing an essay. And especially students in physics, most of the time I've come across students who struggle with essay, organization of the essay. So not exactly a framework, but I give them a format at the very beginning. Like when I'm introducing EE, that these are the important points, or these are the pointers that or titles or subtitles that are required in your essay. And I ask them to stick to that. Few, they definitely go beyond that, right? And that kind of gives them an idea like how to go about it. I do that for both my IA as well as for EE. Just a broad framework so that they stick to those subtitles. So that gives them some help into this direction of writing an essay. Yes, I agree. The right kind of words or the right kind of language doesn't come into the picture, but it's a little help. And then maybe during the first draft, I again guide them in some direction, maybe take help of another, especially maybe a language teacher to look into it or guide them a little bit. That's it. Yes, procrastination, a big problem, especially by the time they come to Rppf 2. You can see sweaty palm. I don't know what to do. It's time deadline, and we are very strict with the submission of Rppf 2 for the first draft. If it is like 10:40 in the morning, it's in 10:40 in the morning. We do not entertain it after that. So yes, procrastination is one thing that we deal with at this time. A lot of last minute requests, a major problem with us, but we are very strict. We are strict with one batch. It percolates down to the other batches as well. And the following years, they know that no means a no. This is the deadline. And by this time, we have to submit it.
I have kids who take so long to come up with their research question that they are really satisfied with. You know, they want to do more and more. And sometimes they fail to think that this is just EE. You know, they want to go like as if it's university level. And then by then it's a little too late. They would have spent months. I had this student, I could not convince the student to like quickly come up and stick to that title and proceed. And by the time that student started the experiment, it was a little late. And then that student was rushing towards the end.
Exactly. So, you know, that is what I do. You have to convince me at the very beginning before you actually put your pen to the paper to write the EE. I've learned this lesson the hard way. I do not let them go into very fancy idea or fancy mode of experimentation. You tell me this, if this is your area of interest, how are you going to do it? Give me a definite idea. So maybe when the EE is introduced, say in the month of February, they have that much time. You can come and meet me as many times as possible, but give me a definite idea. Sell your idea to me. Convince me that you yourself understand, you know how you're going to do. If you're going to use a simulation, which simulation are you going to do? Designing, you know, one of my students, she came up, she went into learning Python, and then started making a program, developing a program. But thankfully, in one of the intermediate sessions, I could just hold her at that point. But please don't get into that. You did not really learn Python to create a simulation and all this stuff. That will not be graded. So, you know, you have to have those small checks in between to see that where they are. Yes, and generally Rppf, the first draft is the time when they fall flat. So if you just hold them at the very beginning. So that is how I came up with the idea about the pitch. Sell your idea to me. If you convince me, you're on track. And then a little checks in between, definitely, it usually helps with me. You can give that a try.
Well, yeah, we have Mohammed raising his hand, and I think we have time for about 2 questions. So Mohammed, and I think Joseph has put a question inside the chat box as well.
Sure. Yes, Mohammed.
Thanks for the offer. I actually struggle with my students to convince them that this is an essay, not an investigation report.
Yes.
So, between an IA topic and an extended essay, they come up with fancy investigations, very rigorous, very complicated. They need such stuff, and they push that idea that no, I'm really interested in it and I want to pursue this. So like, what could be the one thing that you would advise me to convince my students to find a scope of research? This is how I want to convey, I try to convey that there should be some scope of research in terms of theory, and then you should add up to it some investigation. It need not to be a very rigorous one, but there must be research for you, and then compile an essay on it.
Correct. So when I first introduced the EE to my students, remember the exercise that I had put over here, one same RQ with approach to IA and approach to EE. If I look at that RQ, how am I going to do it? Treat it as an IA and treat it as an EE. So once I've done that, if I at all come across a student like this, so this is what I do. Okay, you have this big idea. Pick out the IV, pick out the DV. What are your control variables? How are you going to investigate, right? If it is an investigation, how will you deal with that? And then once they jot down how do they plan to do this investigation, then you can actually tell them, okay, this is where you need to work to make it into an EE. Look at the theory of this particular concept, right? Instead of, you know, getting into that investigation. So developing a theory in EE becomes very important. That is what they need to understand. Could be a lengthy process, but make them jot down what are they actually planning to do. And then you can also identify that, is it heading towards IE or is it heading towards EE? You can clearly say this is how this is aligning more towards a investigation rather than a research. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Coelia, a final question in the chat from Joseph. He said, what is your advice for a new teacher who's just starting? He has 5 students and it already seems like a lot. So
I totally agree, Joseph. I totally agree. When I started, it was like, oh my God, where do I? Writing my own research was far more easier. They came up with weird ideas, honestly, which they had no idea how to start. Totally agree to that. You know, I always say, do not give them any idea. Do not tell them that this is what you have to do. I always ask them, okay, I want to do this. Fine. How you're going to do it? Keep on asking them question. How you're going to do it? What is your independent variable? I hope they're very clear with the independent variable, dependent variable, and all, right? And again, as I had written in the supervisor, what is your job as a supervisor? You need not know the topic, but at least, you know, when the student comes back and tries explaining it back to you, you would understand whether the child understands what he or she is planning to do. Let them come up with that realization. Be more like a therapist out there, sit there and listen to them. Just keep on asking probing questions, and you yourself will gradually get a path how to help that child. That is how it has worked for me, and somehow it has worked that way from the very beginning. I do not give them suggestions. I keep sitting over there. I just act as a devil's advocate. If they say, okay, I want to investigate this, my first question is how? What is your method? How are you going to do that? After 2 questions, they would say, Miss, I'm coming back. I'll come back to you in a day or 2. So they do their prelim research, come back. Again, I play the devil's advocate. I know the very first year, you may need to do this checkpoints a little more frequently than your following years, where you would know that exactly how to go about it. Joseph, and any other time, any other point you need any further help, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm sure Shraddha will share my contact with you. I'll be happy to help.
Thanks so much, Coelia, and thanks to everybody else who joined us as well. You know, this was a 2-hour-long session, but it really flew by, Coelia. So thanks a lot for taking us through that exercise. We will, you know, for anybody who wants Coelia's email, etc., just to stay connected, please feel free to write into us, and we're happy to share it with you there. And coming up right next, you know, we'd love to take you through a 15-minute short platform walkthrough of Toddle to show you how Toddle can help you with the extended essay process at your school. So that will take place at about 1:30 p.m. GMT after the closing session, which is coming right up. So we'd really love for you, if you're inquisitive, to join just to learn a little bit more and also share your own thoughts with us. So I've dropped the link in the chat, and it would be really nice if you can click on it to join it at that time. It's at 1:30 p.m. GMT. And once again, Coelia, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thanks again, especially to Coelia and to all of you for joining us. If you have any feedback, please write to us at susan@toddleapp.com. We want to do many more of these sessions with wonderful educators like Coelia for you, so we can all just keep sharing our teaching and learning practices. So thanks again, Coelia, and it's been an absolute pleasure to host you with us at Toddle.
Thank you so much, Shraddha. You were wonderful as a support, and thank you everybody for participating. I hope we had taken some useful discussions out from here. And as I said, feel free to get in touch with me. I would really like to discuss. It's all about collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Coelia. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye. Thank you
so much.